All right, welcome back. Let's drill down on the question facing Democrats. What do they do now? As we mentioned earlier, the House Judiciary Committee is slated to vote Wednesday on a resolution holding Attorney General William Barr in contempt for failing to comply with a subpoena over the unredacted report. What happens next, though, is unclear. That fight comes amid another brewing battle to have Robert Mueller testify before the committee. A date has not yet been confirmed, and now the president is saying that a hearing with Mueller should not proceed. Joining me now is a member of the House Judiciary Committee that will have a say over these next steps. Pennsylvania Democratic Congresswoman Madeleine Dean joins us. Congresswoman, thank you for taking a few minutes. Let's start on the subject of Barr and contempt. The chairman of your committee there, Jerry Nadler, saying on Wednesday he's prepared to move forward with contempt proceedings against the Attorney General. My question to you is, if that happens, if your committee does vote to hold the Attorney General in contempt, do you believe the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, is ready to move that to the floor of the House? And do you believe that would have the votes to pass if it does?
What I do believe is I really appreciate Jerry Nadler's very strong moving forward with the contempt process, and recognize this is after 3 failures of Attorney General Barr to comply with requests and legal subpoenas by our committee. So I know that our committee, the Democratic side, is eager to meet on Wednesday and to file this report with the Speaker, identifying that the Attorney General has acted in contempt of Congress. It's a very serious thing, and I do know the Chairman is speaking with the Speaker. The results of that, we are not totally sure yet, but I know that we all take it very, very seriously. And you heard the words of Nancy Pelosi over the course of the weekend. It's not lightly that she identifies that the Attorney General, the sitting Attorney General, lied to Congress and now is defying us in contempt.
Well, I ask because the last time you had an Attorney General who was held in contempt by Congress, of course, it was 7 years ago, Eric Holder, by the Republican Congress back then. When that was playing out, when Republicans were pushing forward on that, Nancy Pelosi said this as the Democratic leader. We can play that.
What the Republicans are doing with this motion on the floor today is contemptible. Even for them, it's contemptible. You may recall that 4.5 years ago, we had a motion of contempt for 2 employees at the White House. For over 200 days, we tried to get information from the White House. I and our leadership said, keep trying, so that we don't have to bring the contempt to the floor, because we want to exhaust every remedy. But that's not what is being done here.
So she was making the case back then of give it time before you take a step like contempt. She was citing an example that lasted over 6 months of trying to get information, Democrats from the Bush White House. Does that argument apply here at all? It's only been a few weeks. Do you give this more time just based on that model?
I think we are in such a grave situation that example does not apply. Take a look at what we're talking about. We're talking about an investigation of Russia's sweeping interference with our elections, and then obstruction of justice by the president with the investigation of him. This is such a grave time that I don't believe that is applicable here. Also notice what Mrs. Pelosi asked for in that circumstance was give him time, make a reasonable accommodation. That's exactly what our chairman has done over and over again, only to have Mr. Barr blow through 3 timelines, 3 deadlines. And what's at stake? Robert Mueller tells us what's at stake. The Attorney General has mischaracterized and misled the American people as to the findings of his 22-month report. It's a grave time, and this is unfortunately needed that we find Attorney General Barr in contempt.
Well, if you do find him in contempt, and if the House were then to pass that and formally hold him in contempt, I guess the question we're asking here, though, is what then? Because when Eric Holder was held in contempt by Congress 7 years ago, there was no what then. When these issues have been sort of sorted out through the courts, they've taken years, 2 years for Congress to get a hold of documents after being stonewalled by the White House. So what then?
What then is what we've been asking for all along and what the American people are entitled to, what Congress is entitled to, full reveal of the Mueller report and the underlying documents. Imagine that this Attorney General summarized very loosely and very inaccurately the report in 48 hours, then for 27 days allowed the American public to think that the president was fully exonerated, allowed the president to say no collusion, full exoneration, it's over. That is a miscarriage of justice and a miscarriage of the duties of the Office of the Attorney General that must not be allowed to stand. So what do we want? We want the entire report. What do we want? We want to talk to Mueller. Mueller will be the honest broker of information. Obviously, Mr. Barr has given away his credibility to instead serve the president in some sort of a loyalty oath, or in these troubled waters, try to steer the president out of troubled waters and legal jeopardy instead of trying to steer the American people to clarity and to justice. You know, our Constitution is at stake here. And fortunately, what I think is the good news is that we do have an investigation. We do have a system of laws, including the special counsel regulations, that allow us to know exactly what happened here. As much as this administration is trying to stonewall, as much as this administration and the president directly himself saying, don't come before Congress, ignore your appearance before Congress, we have regulations that allow us to get at that information that is crucial to our democracy and to our constitutional government. So I'm optimistic. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be pretty. But we have a job to do, and the American people deserve nothing less.
Just a very quick question, though, just given how important you're saying Mueller is to all of this. The president saying now he does not want Mueller to testify, does not want him to appear before your committee. How confident are you that Robert Mueller ultimately will appear before your committee? And when do you think, roughly, when do you think you would then hear from him by, if you do believe he'll show up?
I'm optimistic that he will come to us. We have talked about a date of May 15th, but I just talked with the committee today, and they do not have a date set. But I do know that they're in direct conversations with Mueller's team. There are two ways that Mueller could come to us. By way of his boss, the Attorney General, but under the special counsel regulations, he can also come directly to Congress. I hope he will. And I guess I want to connect in. Maybe you've been reporting on it. I wasn't able to listen in. But you saw that just today, a letter by more than 370 former federal prosecutors, Democrats and Republicans, serving in Republican and Democratic administrations, signed a letter saying, but for the Attorney General's policy that you cannot indict a sitting president, the obstruction of justice is there. They cite 3 counts and more, where felony charges of obstruction of justice would have applied to any other person. That's an extraordinary letter with an extraordinary set of bipartisan signatories who hold their country higher than the reputation of this president or the actions of an attorney general irresponsibly protecting him.
And we did. And we discussed this last segment, and that letter from the former prosecutors, it contrasts with the statement from the attorney general. He said he was told by Mueller that it was not just that OLS guideline that led him not to take a position on the question of obstruction of justice, which obviously I think would heighten the stakes for any public statement that Mueller makes, any testimony he does end up giving before your committee, if he indeed does. You say you're still confident of that. We'll see how that plays out. Congresswoman Madeleine Dean from Pennsylvania, thank you for taking a few minutes.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.